I changed the beneficiary on my pension and removed my wife's name from my retirement account. When I walked through the front door that evening, my wife and her son were standing in the living room, shaking with rage. "Have you completely lost your mind?" My stepson screamed, so loud the neighbors could have heard him through the walls. "Mom tried to check the pension portal, and your name is the only one on it now. What did you do?" I looked at both of them without saying a single word. I set my coat down slowly, turned to face them, and told them exactly what I had found. Within 10 seconds, the color drained from both of their faces, and my wife grabbed the arm of the sofa just to keep herself upright. But before I tell you what I found, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And hit that like button if you have ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to love you. My name is Raymond Caldwell. I am 63 years old. For 38 years, I worked as a forensic accountant for one of the most respected financial consulting firms in the state of Ohio. My entire career was built on one simple principle: numbers do not lie. People do. Spreadsheets do not have feelings. Humans do. And in my professional life, I had seen every possible way a dishonest person could hide money, move money, steal money, and then cry innocent when the trail was followed back to their front door. I had testified in federal courtrooms. I had dismantled fraudulent corporations. I had handed prosecutors the exact evidence they needed to put white-collar criminals behind bars. For 38 years, I was the most dangerous thing a thief could face: a patient, methodical man who understood exactly how money moves. And then I came home to my own house and watched it happen to me. I married Gloria 7 years ago. She was warm and funny, and she laughed at all my terrible jokes. Her son Marcus was 24 at the time, still living at home, between jobs, finishing what he called a personal reinvention phase. I did not judge him. I had been patient with difficult situations my entire career. I paid the mortgage on a house we moved into together, a 4-bedroom colonial in a quiet suburb outside Columbus. I covered the utilities, the groceries, the insurance on Gloria's car, and the cell phone plan that kept Marcus connected to whatever version of his future he was building. I told myself I was investing in family. I told myself the returns would come in the form of something money cannot measure. I was wrong on every count. The first crack appeared last spring. I came home early from a client meeting that had been canceled and found Marcus sitting at my desk in my home office. He closed the laptop quickly when I walked in. Too quickly. He said he had been using it to print a resume. I looked at the printer. There was no paper in the output tray. I let it go. I told myself I was seeing things that were not there because I spent my professional life looking for things that were hidden. I told myself that not everything in my own home was a case file. 3 weeks later, I was recovering from a minor knee surgery at Columbus Regional Hospital. I was in the bed for 2 nights, my leg elevated, running on mild sedatives and bad hospital television. On the second afternoon, Gloria came to visit. She stayed for 40 minutes. I noticed she spent most of that time on her phone, rather than talking to me. When she left, she kissed my forehead and told me not to worry about anything at home. She said Marcus was taking good care of everything. I remember thinking that was a strange thing to say. I had not asked about anything at home. I had not expressed a single worry. I was laying in a hospital bed with a swollen knee, not conducting a household inventory. It was the word everything that stayed with me. On the morning of my second day home from the hospital, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop, doing what I had done every morning for nearly 4 decades. I was reviewing numbers. Specifically, I was looking at the quarterly statement from my pension administrator. It was a routine check. I had done it so many times that my eyes moved across the rows of figures automatically, the way a musician reads sheet music without consciously translating each note. And then I stopped. There was a pending request on the account. A modification to the direct deposit routing information had been submitted 6 days ago. The date lined up exactly with my second day in the hospital. The request had been made online through the pension portal using my login credentials and my password. It redirected a portion of my monthly pension disbursement to an external account I did not recognize. I set my coffee cup down very carefully. I pulled up the transaction log. The external account had been opened 11 days before the request was submitted. 11 days before I went into surgery. Someone had been planning this. I closed the laptop screen and sat in the quiet kitchen for a long time, listening to the refrigerator hum and the sound of Gloria moving around upstairs. I did not say a word. I did not confront her. I did not ask Marcus a single question. I was a forensic accountant. I did not ask questions until I already knew every possible answer. I spent the next 4 days being the most pleasant version of myself. I complimented Gloria's cooking. I watched the game with Marcus on Sunday. I laughed at his jokes. I was patient and warm and entirely invisible in the way that people who are gathering evidence have to be. Behind that warmth, I was working. I contacted my pension administrator directly and had the pending modification flagged and frozen. I notified my bank's fraud division about the external account. I pulled 3 years of our shared household financial records and went through them the way I had gone through corporate ledgers for nearly 4 decades, line by line, column by column, with the cold objectivity of someone who had no emotional stake in the outcome. Except this time, I had every emotional stake in the outcome. What I found over those 4 days was not a single crime. It was a business model. Over the previous 2 years, Marcus had quietly positioned himself as the manager of the household. He had gradually assumed control of the joint email account Gloria and I shared for household bills. He had redirected 3 of our service providers to send their statements only to a secondary address he had set up. He had used my digital signature, which he had apparently practiced and stored from a document I had signed in his presence, to authorize a personal loan against a vehicle I owned outright. The loan was small enough not to trigger an automatic alert from my bank. It had been paid into a checking account opened in a name I did not immediately recognize. After 2 hours of research, I confirmed that the account belonged to a limited liability company registered in Delaware, with Marcus listed as the sole managing member. The company had been incorporated 14 months ago. Gloria's name was not on any of the documents, but the billing address for the company's registered agent was our house, and the secondary email address that had been receiving our redirected household statements was accessed from the same IP address as our home internet network, from a device registered to Gloria's phone. She was not an innocent bystander. She was a participant. I sat in my home office on the 4th night and looked at everything I had assembled: the loan documentation, the rerouted pension request, the shell company filings, the email logs, the IP addresses. I thought about the 40 minutes she had spent on her phone in my hospital room. I thought about the word everything. I thought about 38 years of building a career on the belief that honesty was its own form of strength. Then I picked up the phone and called my attorney. The morning I removed Gloria's name from my pension beneficiary designation, I also called my bank and permanently separated my direct deposit from our joint account. I opened an individual account at a different institution entirely. I had my pension administrator generate a new access portal with new credentials and a new security question that no one in my household could have guessed. I changed the passwords on every financial account I owned. I changed the password on my home Wi-Fi network. I drove to the county courthouse and filed an emergency legal notice documenting the unauthorized loan against my vehicle. And then I came home, made dinner, and waited. I did not have to wait long. Gloria discovered the pension portal change at approximately 6 o'clock in the evening. She had apparently been checking it regularly enough that she noticed the modification within hours. By the time I heard the front door open, she and Marcus had already been on the phone with each other, because they walked in together and they were already wound up to a level of outrage that required advanced preparation. What I told them in that living room was simple. I told them I had found the shell company. I told them I had found the loan. I told them I had found the rerouted pension modification submitted from our home network while I was recovering from surgery. I told them the bank's fraud division had already been briefed. I told them my attorney had already filed the emergency legal notice with the county courthouse. I told them that the pension modification had been flagged before a single dollar moved. Gloria sat down on the sofa without being asked. Marcus stared at me with his mouth slightly open, the way people look when they have rehearsed a denial and then discovered that the other person already knows every line of the script. "You went through our private accounts," Gloria finally said. Her voice was low and controlled, trying to reclaim some version of authority. "I went through my accounts," I told her. "The accounts that belong to me. The pension I built over 38 years. The vehicle I paid for before I ever met you. The retirement savings I accumulated through 4 decades of work that began before your son was born. Marcus recovered faster than his mother. He crossed his arms and tilted his jaw upward the way young men do when they are trying to look like they have leverage they do not actually possess. That loan was going to be paid back. It was a short-term business investment. You would have seen the return within 6 months. Show me the business plan, I said. He did not say anything. Show me the revenue projections. Show me the client contracts. Show me any document that explains why a legitimate business investment required my digital signature on a loan I was never told about, using an asset I own, with the proceeds directed to a company I was not informed existed. The room was very quiet. We needed capital, Gloria said. Marcus had an opportunity, and we did not want to bother you with it while you were recovering. We were going to tell you. The company was incorporated 14 months ago, I said. My niece's surgery was 3 weeks ago. The math does not support the story. What happened next happened quickly. Gloria shifted from the posture of a caught woman into the posture of an aggrieved wife. She stood up, straightened her blouse, and told me that I was paranoid and controlling, and that my career had made me see criminal behavior where none existed. She said I had always held the finances over her head like a threat. She said she felt like a prisoner in her own home. She cried, and the tears came so fast and so evenly that I recognized them for what they were. Not grief, but performance. Marcus picked up his car keys and told me he was going to give us space. On his way out, he made a point of bumping my shoulder with his as he passed. He did not say, "Excuse me." I called my attorney that night. My attorney had already been in contact with the bank's fraud division. By the following morning, the emergency legal notice on the vehicle had triggered a review of the unauthorized loan. The lending institution that had processed it, a small online lender that Marcus had apparently found specifically because their verification process was minimal, was now in contact with the county fraud unit. Because I had documented the IP address and device logs from the pension portal modification, the case file was building itself. I had not manufactured a single piece of evidence. I had simply organized what already existed. 3 days after the confrontation in my living room, Gloria received a letter from my attorney formally notifying her that I was initiating divorce proceedings and that a temporary financial restraining order had been filed with the court, freezing any joint assets pending resolution of the fraud investigation. Her attorney, a man she apparently had on retainer already, which told me everything I needed to know about how long this had been planned, filed a counter-motion within 48 hours. The motion claimed I was emotionally abusive, financially controlling, and had recently suffered a mental health deterioration that compromised my judgment. The mental health claim was the tell. It matched the pension modification exactly, submitted while I was in the hospital, framed around medical incapacity. Someone had decided at some point that the safest way to access my money was to establish that I was not mentally fit to protect it. The surgery had just been the opportunity they were waiting for. At the hearing, Gloria's attorney was a loud man who seemed to believe that volume was a substitute for evidence. He described me as a cold, domineering husband who had systematically isolated Gloria from her own finances for 7 years. He asked the judge for emergency spousal support of $8,000 a month, exclusive access to the marital home, and a freeze on my pension disbursements pending a forensic accounting review, as if a forensic accounting review was something they wanted rather than something that would destroy them. My attorney let him finish. She did not interrupt once. She waited until the echo of his final sentence had fully settled into the courtroom before she stood up. She was a quiet woman in a gray suit who had represented me in 2 previous civil matters and who understood better than most people in that building that the most effective thing you can say in a courtroom is something you cannot take back. She placed a single binder on the judge's bench. Inside was a copy of the Shell Company Incorporation documents, the loan application bearing my forged digital signature, the IP address and device logs from the pension portal modification, the bank records showing the loan proceeds directed into the company account, and the email logs confirming that Gloria's phone had accessed the secondary address, receiving our redirected household statements on 17 separate occasions over 14 months. Your Honor, my attorney said, The petitioner's counsel just asked this court to freeze my client's pension while conducting a forensic accounting review. I would like to inform the court that the forensic accounting review has already been completed. My client conducted it himself. He is a licensed forensic accountant with 38 years of experience and a federal certification in financial fraud investigation. What you are holding is the result of that review. The judge was a woman in her 50s, with the expression of someone who had seen a great many things and been surprised by very few of them. She opened the binder. She read the executive summary. Without looking up, the courtroom was the kind of quiet where you become aware of the ventilation system. Gloria's attorney tried to object. He used words like ambush and prejudicial and procedural irregularity. My attorney reached into her bag and produced an identical binder, which she placed directly on his table without a word. The loan application. The judge said without looking up from the binder. The digital signature. Walk me through the verification trail. My attorney walked her through it. The device logs, the timestamp, the hospital admission records confirming I was under sedation at the time the digital signature was submitted. The metadata embedded in the scanned document, which showed it had been created on a device registered to Marcus Whitfield, Gloria's son, 11 days before my surgery. Gloria looked at her attorney. Her attorney looked at his binder. He turned to page 4 and stopped turning pages. The judge denied every element of Gloria's motion. Emergency spousal support denied. Exclusive access to the marital home denied. Freeze on my pension denied. She granted my attorney's counter-request for a civil asset freeze on the shell companies, holdings, pending criminal referral. And then she did something that I had watched judges do only a handful of times in my career. She looked directly at Gloria and said, "I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review of potential charges, including fraudulent use of a digital signature, unauthorized access to protected financial accounts, and conspiracy to commit elder financial fraud." The word elder landed in the room differently than the other words. It landed with a specific legal weight that Gloria had apparently not anticipated. Her face did not crumble. It went flat, the way faces do when the mind is processing something too large to immediately generate an expression for. Her attorney gathered his papers and said very quietly that he would need to consult with his client before proceeding further. He did not look at Gloria when he said it. He was already mentally calculating the distance between her situation and his own professional liability. The fraud investigation took 4 months. At the end of those 4 months, the district attorney filed charges against Marcus for fraudulent use of a digital signature, unauthorized access to a protected financial account, and criminal conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse. Gloria was charged as a co-conspirator on the last 2 counts. The vehicle loan was voided by the lender as a product of fraud, and the lien was removed from my title. The money that had been transferred into the LLC before I froze the accounts, a smaller amount than they had intended to move because the pension modification had been caught before it fully executed, was ordered returned as part of the civil asset recovery process. Marcus's attorney negotiated. I was told through my own attorney that Marcus wanted to express remorse and that the remorse was genuine. I did not respond to that message. Remorse submitted through a lawyer billing $400 an hour is a product, not an emotion. Gloria's divorce settlement reflected the fact that the court had already seen the binder. Her attorney argued for half of the marital assets. The judge reviewed the fraud findings and determined that Gloria's participation in a scheme to redirect my pension disbursements constituted financial misconduct under Ohio law, which affected the equitable distribution. She received a fraction of what her attorney had initially demanded. The marital home was sold. My name came off the joint account. The money that had been mine before the marriage remained mine after it. On the morning the last document was signed, I drove north. I had a reservation at a small inn on the shore of Lake Erie that I had been looking at online for 2 years. It was not a grand property. It had 12 rooms, a dining room that served breakfast until 10 o'clock, and a porch that faced directly over the water. I had passed on booking it every year because there had always been reason to stay home. A family dinner, a commitment, a silence I did not want to disturb by being absent for a few days. I checked in on a Thursday. The woman at the front desk handed me a room, key attached to a wooden fob, and told me the water was calm this time of year. I carried my own bag upstairs. The room was simple: a bed, a window, a small desk, and outside the glass, the gray-green surface of Lake Erie, stretching to the horizon, with nothing on it but light. I sat in the chair by the window for a long time, without opening my bag. I thought about 38 years of reading numbers and understanding what they concealed. I thought about the way I had sat in that kitchen on the morning I found the pension modification, setting my coffee cup down carefully, because even in that moment, some part of me understood that what happened next would require precision. I thought about my sister's voice on the phone when I played her the recording, and how she had not said a word for almost a full minute after the audio ended, and how that silence had felt for the first time in months like something I did not have to carry alone. I am a 63-year-old man. I have spent my entire professional life understanding that fraud is not always committed by strangers. The most expensive betrayals happen inside the house. They happen quietly through accounts you trust and passwords you share, and people who understand that the most dangerous position they can occupy is right next to you, where your guard is lowest and your love is greatest. The numbers in my pension account are whole again. The name on my retirement fund is mine alone. The vehicle title is clean. The house is sold, and the proceeds are in an account that belongs to one person, and that person is me. I opened the window. The lake air came in cold and direct, the way things feel when there is nothing between you and the source of them anymore. I breathed it in. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel angry. I felt the specific, quiet clarity of a man who followed a trail of numbers all the way to the truth and refused to look away from what he found. If you have ever had someone in your own home treat your trust as a transaction, you already know what that clarity costs. You know what it takes to see clearly when seeing clearly breaks something you wanted to keep whole. Hit the like button and share your story in the comments below. And if you are watching this from somewhere far from home, tell me where. I will be reading every single one. No matter how much you give, you cannot buy loyalty from someone who only sees your value in what you provide. Raymond's story reminds us that real strength is not about holding on. It is about knowing when to finally let go quietly, without cruelty, without losing yourself. Protect what you built. Trust your instincts and never mistake someone's comfort with your generosity for love. A small note for you. This story was created and fictionalized by AI.